Wow, that was a really big box to unpack. Hey, this is Shuzi, and this is a masterpiece from YouTube's biggest art collab, and it's here in Canada. I'm super honored to be the next artist to add to it. This art collab was started by 1000, and many talented artists have each added their piece to this. The finished painting will be auctioned off for charity once it's done. So thank you, 1000, for starting this awesome project. And of course, thank you, Chuck, for having faith in me. It's surreal to have this precious piece in my hand, and seeing the artworks in person, I can see all the colors and textures. It's even more amazing than I could ever imagine from watching the videos. So here comes my biggest problem. I do watercolor, which usually goes on paper. I cannot directly put watercolor on the board. If I do, it'll just bead up and I can wipe it right off. So I really need to figure out a way to prepare the board so when I put watercolor on it, it will stay. So these tubs are watercolor grounds. I have white, gold, and black. I think it also comes in translucent and pearlescent as well. I also got these wood panel from dollar store. Although it's very thin, it's wood. It's going to be a very realistic test. I also got these tools to spread the watercolor ground onto the wood panel. The brush is fine. This might be too big, but I'm just hoping it can help me to create an even surface. I'm trying to spread it evenly, but it's really hard. Probably because I haven't used it for a long time and it's dried a bit in the bottle. So I sped up the dabbing and brushing because I can feel it continues to dry as soon as being exposed to the air. Apparently, speeding up doesn't help, so I switched to the roller. But as I roll, most of the ground was picked up by the roller and I can see the bare wood underneath. This isn't good, so I have to keep adding ground and keep rolling repeatedly. Then I realized another issue with this roller. It creates a textured surface like painting a wall, but the ground is much thicker than the paint, so it doesn't self-level. I ripped off a small piece of thick paper to brush over the surface, trying to use a straight edge to smooth out some of the bumps. But the paper isn't very straight. It creates a bunch of lines and made it even worse. So I switched to a palette knife because it has a cleaner edge. But my control is not very good, so I ruined it and re-rolled it with a roller, and then I tried the paper again. I just kept practicing until it starts to really harden. I left it to dry for 48 hours, and now it's ready to be painted on. Following my usual process, I started with a light wash of the skin and the lighter colors. The feel of the surface is surprisingly good. It's just like painting on paper. It's a bright white, so the color shows really well. The texture is quite nice. It's a combination of rough surface and elongated flat area. I was really happy, so I started to paint more freely and trying different techniques. But I immediately started to realize this ground has one big difference from paper. The paint on the watercolor ground dries so much slower. If you're familiar with watercolor, this means to get sharp lines on top of another layer, I'll have to wait much longer. Otherwise, the line will melt with the first layer and become fuzzy and make the color muddy. This really sucks and gonna slow down my work a lot. By now, you're probably wondering what I'm drawing here. I came up with this sketch because I was thinking how surprised and excited I was when I picked up this huge box of this art collab. I was literally jumping around like a happy monkey. Now to finish it off, I added blue tape it came with and gave it the appropriate label. The other reason I wanted to do this test piece is that I can hold it up against the actual painting to see if the look and feel of watercolor goes well with the rest of the artwork. Because the rest of the artwork is done in mostly acrylic and oil, which is really vibrant and sharp. Watercolor sometimes, can have that washed out look, and I really want to make sure my painting is vibrant enough and the style goes well with the rest of the artwork, so in the end, it's a cohesive piece. Composition-wise, I think I'm gonna choose this corner because I really like the depth created by the mountain and the water, and I think the painterly look goes really well with my style. She's pretty small now, so I'm gonna make her a little bit bigger so she can climb up the mountain here with a gigantic box. Just kidding, I'm gonna design something specifically for this corner so I don't ruin the masterpiece. The first idea came to my mind is a girl or goddess flying in the sky, coming towards us from behind the mountain. The perspective looks weird and her body will be too small. So I'm starting a new layer and changing it to an upright figure, standing behind the mountain. I couldn't resist putting her hand on the mountain. Now it looks kind of scary, like she's a giant trying to climb over to eat the fish. So I'm starting another new layer, and I think she needs to be cuter. Maybe instead of trying to dodge the mountain, I'll have her in front of the mountain, popping out from the main panel. On the next layer, I'm inserting her between the mountain and water. This looks promising, so I give her prettier eyes and some more details like necklace. But her pose looks stiff and her hands are overlapping her body too much. So on a new layer, I tweaked her hand to make it interact with the fish. Spoiler alert, my final design is a mermaid, but it's not any of these designs. I'm gonna keep it a secret for now, and after watching the video, let me know if you prefer any of these initial designs over my final one. I knew putting the ground on the actual board would be harder, because I had to carefully go around the mountains and also adding my character on top of the water. But I didn't expect this problem. Because the water was painted in acrylic, when I put the watercolor ground on top, it's so slippery it's just being pushed around. I tried so many times, applying more ground with the sponge, spreading it out with a spatula. It was just not getting better, and my back was hurting like mad because I've been struggling at this for an hour. Then I suddenly had this idea. If I can't get it smooth, why don't I create some patterns? So I used a small brush to create some shapes of the fish scales. Now I'm at a point of no return. This takes 48 hours to dry. If this comes off or it doesn't look good, I'll have to send it off and redo, and it's gonna delay the project for another 2 days. After 48 hours, I took a look at the ground. Thank God it looks pretty good and pretty secure, so I'm finally ready to paint on the real thing. Now here's my final design. I love the mermaid idea, but I didn't like the pose. So I changed it to a more dynamic pose with a big smile on her face jumping out of the water. As usual, I'm starting off with the light colors, giving her a nice base skin color, then I'm adding the sky with some clouds as the background. Since Bam and Chuck both added super awesome frames for the main panel and the left panel, I'm adding one as well to echo the design. And I chose to use water because it fits the ocean theme on this panel and it can be connected to the wave painted by Sam. For her hair, I'm using a purple and pink combination to make it interesting, and also to echo with other colors on the main panel. Learning from my experiment, I'm trying to make the colors as strong as possible on the first go, to avoid too many layers and therefore I can cut down the waiting time. Her skin should be dry enough, so I added the details on her face. I always like to paint the eyes as early as possible, because they're usually the focus of the painting and have very strong color. It gives me a guidance to match the vibrancy for the rest of the painting. And if you follow my channel, you probably know that I like as little clothes as possible. So I designed this organically shaped bikini, which is basically her scales. The difficult part is to make sure the scales follow the right perspective so the body looks three-dimensional. I painted each piece first, and then I decided to give the whole area a colorful wash to mimic the shine and smooth color transition of a very vibrant fish. Also, to echo the rest of the painting, I made her tail more towards a green and emerald shade, with a hint of yellow to make it pop even more. Now most of the colors are laid out. I'm adding small details here and there to make the character more solid. For the scales, I'm using green and blue metallic paints to add some sheen and reflections. It looks really nice. To complete the composition and add some motion, I'm adding a cute flying fish above her head. I don't want it to fight for attention, so I'm keeping the fish in silver with a hint of purple and yellow being the reflection from the mermaid's hair. With that, the mermaid's portion is pretty much done. Last thing I'm doing here is to add some highlights to make it pop. Alright, that is it for watercolor. Now I want to create a seamless connection between the mermaid and the water. So here I'm adding the splashes when she jumps out. But because this part is not covered by watercolor ground, I need to use acrylic paint. By now you probably think it's done, but nothing can ever go smoothly. I'm so excited it's almost done, and last thing I wanted to add is her hand, because I designed the hand to be reaching over to the main panel holding onto the frame. I designed it to be like this, but it looks like her arm is broken. I can't not add the hand because this arm will be like weird. Where is it going? Her arm looks too long anyways, so I think I'm gonna change the design so her arm might be going over like this, holding onto this ball here, just showing 1 or 2 fingers. So I redrew this hand in this new pose. It's so small and delicate, I have to jam my face so close to see what I'm painting. I actually like this version even more. Sometimes mistakes lead to unexpected good things. I finally finished my part. I'm so excited to show you what the whole thing looks like. And that was a long journey. From the moment I picked up the painting, aside from work, I used all my leftover time to finish this. But I think the result is totally worth it. This is such a humbling experience, giving me the opportunity to learn and engage with other amazing artists. There's so much for me to learn and improve, both in art and in video editing. And I hope you guys stay with me in my future journey. Now, the most exciting part. Let me reveal the next artist.
What's going on, guys? My name is Matt Smith, or better known as Smitty Tut of Smitty Tut Designs. Now, you may know me from various points in my life as my art is always changing. Now, keep in mind, I'm a big nerd and video games and comic books found their way into my art for quite a few years. Like back in the day, I used to post on DeviantArt all my digital color works. And that's basically where I would take someone's rendition of a character, bring it into Photoshop, and digitally color it on my Wacom drawing tablet. And a few years later, I started transitioning my artwork into metal art. And that's where I would make various statues, bookends, wall plaques, necklaces, all out of metal. And then I would take them to comic book and video game conventions all around. But a lot of recognition came from my aluminum cosplay swords and shields, especially the Captain America shields and all the other variations that I made. And after about 10 years of making those swords and shields, I figured it was about time for me to hone my craft, start making real swords, real knives, real cleavers, and then sheaths to go with them made out of leather. And a little bit of jewelry here and there. So where my metalworking is currently? Well, if you've been watching any of the YouTube knife maker challenges here on YouTube, they've been going on for a few years now. Last year, I entered the viewers bracket of the Fantasy Challenge and surprisingly took first place with this sword and sheath that I made. And their next challenge after that was the Chopper Challenge. And I made this cleaver and sheath, and to my surprise, I got first place for that one too. And their current challenge is the Samurai Challenge. And legitimately, it's going on right now. My build is right here on the table in front of me. Can't show you yet, but the video will be posted here in a couple weeks. Like I said, a couple weeks, that's for me to finish the build, do a lot of video editing, and hit that deadline. But after that, I'm on to this collaboration like you have no idea. I'm so stoked about this. Seriously, my wife and 3 kids and I have been watching 10 Huns videos for years now. We even backed the Vivid Kingdom cards when those were announced. We religiously watch all the YouTube's biggest art collab videos as they come out, and then we subscribe to each new artist because it's really fun to see how it evolves. So to hear that Suji picked me to be next in line, we were completely blown away. And I know what you're thinking. What does a sword maker have to do with YouTube's biggest art collab? Well, I'm not sure just yet, but I got some things in mind and some tricks up my sleeve. So with all that said, I want to do a big thank you to Suji for keeping me in mind to be the next person in line. Big thank you guys for watching. Keep an eye out, because this is going to be wicked fun.
Wow, what an intro. I'm so excited I found Matt before his channel explodes. Matt is a master of his craft and also a super nice person to talk to. I'm so happy I made another new friend from this art collab. Go check out his channel and give him some love and support. I can't wait to see what Matt comes up for this piece, and I'm sure it's going to be amazing. Now I'm going to pack this up and I'm going to ship it to Matt.